Welcome to Cwic Show. My name is Greg Mattson, and I'm your host. Our guest today is John Hewlett, the founder of the product Cardio Miracle. John, we had you on about a month ago. I wanted to re-interview you to go over a little bit more about the product and the results that some of the people are having that are going on to the product. I have been doing a lot more research, even from the beginning. You know, originally before we had you sponsor Cwic Show, we did quite a bit of research to make sure that this was the right type of product that I wanted to have on the program. And not only was it scientifically sound, but I went through personal experience with a product where I actually have measurable markers that changed for the better from tests and labs and everything else after being on Cardio Miracle for about 30 days. And we're going to go over a couple of other issues that I want to talk about. One is going to be just the use of alternative medicine as compared to just relying on medicine, air quotes on that. And then I've got some resources I want to pull on one of the guys that I follow, Dr. David Pulmer, who is the one who wrote Grain Brain. And he's got some very interesting information on nitric oxide that just corroborates everything that we've been talking about. So that's a long intro, but welcome to the show again.
Greg, it's a pleasure to be on. And I can't be more pleased to support and help great patriots and great church members like yourself who are putting yourself out there, spending hundreds of hours of research, trying to help find transparency, truth, and pointing people to the Savior in the process. And I know that I represent a product, and people sometimes seem to get, overworked over the fact that someone like yourself or other podcasters want to talk about what I'm doing. But, hey, nitric oxide was called the spark of life in the cell. So, I guess, it wasn't talking about wild blueberries, will help your hearing. It talks about the spark of life in your cell. So I really, I've been doing this now for 15 plus years. It's never ceases to amaze me of the wonderful benefits of seeing lives improved with a natural product with no side effects. But, all open-minded, wise people, we've been told, study the best books, study the research, find truth wherever you find it. Just hope people will be open-minded, but whatever's most important for their health should be important to them. And that's all we're trying to do is share information. And I'm a very flawed messenger. I thought one of the great parts of The Chosen was when John the Baptist was with the Savior at the river. And John the Baptist turned to the Savior of mankind and he says, "Hey, man, when are you going to come out with the big message? When are you going to take action here?" And I just thought that was one of the great, great moments of here's John the Baptist who was out there, he was making waves wherever he went. He was fearless in what he did and ultimately paid with his head on a platter for that fearlessness. But I just thought it was interesting. And the Savior's calm response was, "I'm working on a really important speech, a really important talk," which was the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
But I just love so I guess I'm a cross between maybe John the Baptist and Johnny Appleseed for nitric oxide. I just want people to know and be educated that there's hope and that nitric oxide is important and that vitamin D3 is important. Now, people now understand that vitamin D3 is important, but 10 years ago, hardly anyone knew anything about it. And so it took people like myself to help bring it to the forefront to get the medical community, which is almost completely ignorant of nutritional sources. Traditional medicine does not study the nutritional side, other than a cardiologist will say, "Hey, you need to lose some weight," or whatever. They don't talk about, the different vitamins, minerals, and supplements. Most of them, a little bit more now than used to be, but that used to be totally taboo. So, I think it's important that people are informed and that we are transparent and that we find answers and look for answers. And sometimes answers come from strange places, like a 14-year-old boy in New York, a farm boy, uneducated. One of your listeners from our last webinar says, why are we supposed to believe a 50-pound overweight guy talking to us from a cabin? And I had to laugh, but the reality is truth from wherever, what did they, and I believe me, I'm not comparing myself in any way to Joseph Smith or the Savior or John the Baptist or anything else. But remember what they said about the Savior, hey, can anything good come from Bethlehem? What in the world are we supposed to attach any value to somebody from Bethlehem, for heaven's sake? So truth is truth. And I appreciate having the chance to visit with you. I've grown to be fond of what you're doing and admire greatly your good work.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I wanted to just take a step back and give a little bit more to the listeners here on my personal experience with these things. I grew up as a teenager already with huge health problems. I couldn't go to organized sports as a teenager because I was held back from these issues. I almost didn't go on a mission because of it. I almost came home from my mission. In fact, I will tell you, John, probably, let's call it maybe one of the top 3 spiritual experiences I ever had was an understanding, and this is going to seem way out of left field for some people, but I was about to go home from my mission because I could not keep going. I mean, I am telling you, I have never in my life pushed myself harder to say, I have to make this work. I have to make this work. And that pressure, you'd feel, and the anxiety and just I have to do this. I can't go home. And I'm not going to go into specifics on exactly what experience I had, but I knew from the Spirit that I was going to be all right. And it had to do with certain products that were going to help me in getting through my mission. Well, my mission was one of the healthiest times of my life, the second half of my mission. And so for those of you that might be skeptical about alternative medicine, or maybe you've tried it before and nothing happened with it and it was not a good product or whatever, I am here to tell you that if you find the right products, if you find those things and do the research, the actual research, the scientific research, read the papers on things that can help improve your life, your daily life every day, that there are things that can help you with those things. And not only that, you look at, I had I brought this up to you before, John, but on the last interview we had in the comments section, which got pretty long on that interview, there was a doctor that came on there. And I don't know how long the thread is of comments between he and I.
Like 12.
I honestly, I think it's about 30 or 40 comments. But the arrogance from this doctor saying things, just telling me what I have experienced or I haven't experienced, or what is right and what is wrong, after he in his entire life has taken one course in medical school on nutrition and prevention. Stephen Covey used to say, look, I've got a doctor for prevention and I've got a doctor for emergencies.
It's a good point. That's
right.
Well said.
And so it was his medical doctor was the emergency side, and the other doctor was more of a holistic.
And that was a guy, that was actually a guy in Utah County that I know who was an osteopath who treated Robert Redford and Covey and a bunch of people. And he primarily dealt with nutritional aspects and chiropractic, massage, those types of things for prevention. And had Covey not been riding a bike at 70 miles an hour or whatever, when he was 80 years old and unfortunately had an accident that caused his downfall, he'd be still alive. He was in good shape. He was in good health.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the right approach, right? You've got to have, the doctors are great. The doctors in my life, at a minimum, I know for sure have saved my life twice, right? In medicine. And when I say medicine, I'm talking about the hospital.
Traditional. Yeah.
I'm talking about the hospital, right? I mean, I've been at the hospital, and science and medicine have saved my life in those hospitals twice. beyond that, I mean, you could say it other, and I'm still right. I've got pills here that I take. I have so many, I have to have one of these things. And this is half of what they want me to take because I won't take more, right? I'm not going to do more than this. And I'm trying to wean off of as many of these things as I can. Good. And something like nitric oxide helps me do that. My blood pressure has dropped. My energy has increased. The blood flow has increased. This is something I can say that I wasn't able to say when I originally did a video on this, but I haven't had a gout attack in I think it's 7.5 weeks now. And now that may not seem like a big deal to you.
If anyone who's been a gout sufferer, that's a big deal because
I can't remember. One year was 15, the other was 19 in the last couple of years, attacks each year. And so that's incredible for me. That's a life altering for me. And these types of products can make those changes. You had recently a new study done. I think it was back in August. Do you want to go over that a little bit? Just tell us what they're talking about. Is this specific to Cardio Miracle, or is it just over nitric oxide?
No. This is what makes it so rare. And so for all of those naysayers out there, this is from Frontier in Nutrition, the third most cited science nutritional journal, peer-reviewed at the highest level. I mean, this gets more sightings than the Mayo Clinic, Harvard, Cambridge. This is the third most cited. And the article is specifically about the functional characterization of nutraceuticals using spectral clustering. And what that is, spectral clustering is artificial intelligence, that essentially they're evaluating a nutraceutical like Cardio Miracle using artificial intelligence. So they took my 53 ingredients in every serving of Cardio Miracle, and they boiled it down to 750 mechanisms of action from those 53 ingredients. And then they put those 750 mechanisms of action against 15 to 16 million articles, research papers, clinical studies, etc., on those mechanisms. And that's from what they drew their conclusion. And then it talks about, so here is at the first page summary statement. It says about Cardio Miracle being this nutraceutical. And I left my glasses at home when I'm at the office. It says, the interactions between protein networks affected by these substances modulate functions of a network of protein complexes regulating caveolae, which is essentially like the mitochondria, mediated endocytosis. Now, TGF beta activity, that's for you diabetics, that's kidneys and pancreas. TGF beta activity, vitamin D efficacy, and host defense systems identification of this regulatory scheme and the working of embedded reciprocal feedback loops has significant implications for treatment of vitamin D deficiencies, which is like 80% of the population, atherosclerosis, which is cardiovascular disease, peripheral artery disease, clogging the arteries. That's what atherosclerosis.
I'm familiar with that.
Metabolic and infectious diseases. So it talks about impacting to the good, metabolic and infectious diseases. And it even says the magic words that nobody's supposed to say, such as COVID-19. This is probably the first journal ever in the world that has said that something has significant implications for treatment of infectious diseases such as COVID-19. And later in the article, it's a number of pages, and we can end up sending you a link and people can read it. I mean, unlike the pharmaceutical companies that don't want us to see anything for 75 years, we're happy to let you look at the research immediately that was published. But the reality is this article talks about that the ingredients in Cardio Miracle have a dramatic and significant impact to the good on all known 2,500 chronic illnesses. That's what this article says. So
that's pretty big.
People say, well, what is a, overweight guy in a cabin know? Well, I don't know anything, but these guys, this scientists who did these studies, they ran it through every known article, journal, clinical trial in the world, in the history of the archives of the world. And they came up with these conclusions. And their final conclusion at the end of several pages is, so it says, Cardio Miracle has efficacy in increasing nitric oxide production, vitamin D efficacy, decreases TGF beta signaling and oxidative stress, back to the diabetes again, and activate autophagy. Now, autophagy is where the cell burns the waste material and helps get rid of it and actually turns it into more energy. So we're seeing people now, even myself, if I go on the keto diet or if I do intermittent fasting because of the effect on autophagy, that burning my own cell fat waste, you lose weight. And I've lost some weight and I'm going to lose more. I just travel so much and I do like eating. I hate to say that. So then it talks about the down regulation, and I'm sorry to be too technical, but I want to read it right from the study. The down regulation of TGF beta activity and the activation of autophagy is anticipated to intercept or reverse endothelial dysfunction associated diseases. To intercept and reverse endothelial dysfunction. That's the lining of the artery that causes those associated diseases such as atherosclerosis, diabetic kidney disease, and COVID-19. Supplementation with Cardio Miracle like functionalities is projected to benefit treatment of these diseases.
It sounds pretty impressive.
We are blowing the minds of the top scientists and medical researchers throughout the country as we are speaking. I'm getting phone calls from all over North America, from top scientists, top researchers, people who know how important nitric oxide is. And they say, you have a study that says this? This is unbelievable. We cannot believe that that's possible. And experts like Dr. Judy Mikovits, Dr. David Martin, Dr. Christiane Northrup, they're like saying, well, we knew it worked. Now we have proof from the scientific community. So again, I'm not making a medical claim. I'm just reading to you from a published, peer review, top 5 scientific nutritional journal.
That's interesting. I was speaking with a nutritional biochemist that I happened to run into maybe, 2-3 weeks ago. He knew of your product, which is pretty interesting. He's actually doing a paper right now on nitric oxide. I don't know if they'll reference Cardio Miracle on it or not, but he knew of the product and it is focusing in on the benefits of nitric oxide, which seems to be the more awareness that people have on this, that the more, the more demand there is for something that's going to produce more nitric oxide. Here's another one. So this here is someone I follow closely. I've got about, half a dozen to a dozen nutritional sources that I've been close to for many years. And when I say close, I mean that I've followed closely. I actually have spoken with a couple of them. But Dr. Plummeter is the one who wrote Grain Brain. And I just want to go through a couple of quotes on his new book that's called Drop Acid, which actually means dropping uric acid. And he's come in and he's talked about the dual, the dynamic between how high your uric acid is and how low your nitric oxide might be. And as your uric acid increases and your nitric oxide decreases, all of these problems, like you spoke about insulin,
inflammation, primarily
inflammation, metabolic diseases are, all of the metabolic diseases. Actually, he goes over on this. But let me just go through a couple of these, and then if you want to jump in, John, anytime you want to expound on this, I'd appreciate that. So first off, he just kind of goes over something about nitric oxide. He says, first, it helps to know that nitric oxide is produced naturally by your body, and it's important for many aspects of your health. Perhaps its most vital function is vasodilation, which is talking about the
arterial expansion.
Yeah, the elasticity of your blood vessels. As such, NO, or nitric oxide, is considered one of the most powerful regulatory molecules of the cardiovascular system. But it's also important in insulin function, because another important role of blood vessels is to facilitate insulin's move from the bloodstream into the cells, primarily the muscle cells, where it allows glucose to enter and make glycogen. Okay, so he's just, and we're not going to have time to go into how far he goes into the insulin play on with nitric oxide here, but he really goes into this and talks a lot about it. Another thing he says here, he goes over how uric acid goes up with fructose, purines, and alcohol, those three main things. And what happens when your nitric oxide drops: insulin resistance, hypertension, right, high blood pressure, and reduced blood flow to organs. And so you can imagine taking the ability to increase the NO, your nitric oxide, and to reduce or get rid of insulin resistance, high blood pressure, and reduced flow to organs.
Well, let me first of all, I love somebody who researches and somebody who understands. They're the most fun for me to talk to. But the reason insulin has a problem, the reason insulin sometimes has a problem is because the arteries are stiff. And so when you're getting into the bloodstream, if the arteries are stiff and they're not receptive, and nitric oxide opens up the arterial wall to be received by the cell. And one of all three of our studies have said that Cardio Miracle specifically opens up the caveola, which opens up the mitochondria to be receptive to the nutrition. And people say, well, yeah, but what if you're giving it bad stuff? Well, first of all, the body protects itself. It protects itself through the arterial wall. It protects us through the mitochondrial wall. It protects itself against foreign enemies types of things. And that's why a lot of times synthetic vitamins are kind of useless in a lot of ways, because they aren't absorbable. And so you end up with expensive urine instead of absorbable vitamins. So people say, well, I'm taking things. Well, nitric oxide relaxes the artery, increases the velocity of the blood flow while it lowers your pulse, which is interesting. And that better flow of oxygenated nitric oxide rich blood actually stimulates more nitric oxide, which opens
from
up
your own body.
From your own body. Mm-hmm. And see, all night, what we're doing is we're just giving the body ingredients, several pathways of nitric oxide stimulation over a period of time, 12 to 24 hours. We've scientifically proven in the top lab in the world that measures this, that our nitric oxide is 24 to 36 hours of stimulation, where super beats and a handful of arginine or a bunch of capsules of citrulline from GNC are 2 to 3 hours, maybe. So having 24 hours, because the other aspect is sometimes a good thing can be a bad thing. And if you get too much nitric oxide without adequate antioxidants, without adequate vitamin B12 and other anti-inflammatory types of things, it can actually become a free radical and cause oxidative stress. So here we have a published study that says that our ingredient list helps mediate oxidative stress. And then Professor Malinsky, the University of Ohio, he proved 4 years ago that Cardio Miracle reduces the free radicals in the body simultaneously by over 50%. He was blown away. I didn't even know what peroxynitrite was. I mean, I'm just a guy who's connected the dots from the smartest people in the world. And it just made sense to me. and as it made sense, and I knew and researched each ingredient, that I thought, well, this might be good in this. And I really, I mean, I hate to say it because people say, well, who do you think you are? I just really believe that the science of nitric oxide was revealed as a latter-day gift to the Lord's people. I just believe that. And I believe that it was to humanity to offset what we were going through. And we talk of the term that in the last days, the hearts of men would fail them. I used to talk about that like 14 years ago. And people in the direct sales company would kind of roll their eyes and say, what are you doing? You know, you're talking about the gold mine that's going to finance the missionary work of the church. And I go, no, seriously. If this is called the spark of life in the cell, doesn't that have a spiritual implication to you? I mean, to a person, the spark of life? Well, when you look at, you know, the breath is the life of man and the blood is the life of the body. And they've now proven scientifically at Case Western University in Cleveland that if you don't have adequate nitric oxide in your blood during a transfusion, you can have a heart attack. You have to have adequate nitric oxide. And Greg, you hit right upon it on the uric acid thing, is that nitric oxide is the traffic cop. It's the air traffic control. It's the lighthouse of the body functions. It is the regulator. It is the person that, you know, let's say all the traffic lights are out. You got to have somebody who's directing traffic. That's what nitric oxide does. And if it's done and stimulated 24/7, you're going to feel younger, you're going to be healthier, and you're going to have better nutrition and better anti-inflammatories. Go back to uric acid. Uric acid is a precursor for heart disease. It's highly inflammatory. It's why people have rheumatoid arthritis and all of these types of things. And you're a candidate for serious cardiovascular issues, or you have them. And you know, in your own case, you've talked to me about having diabetes and having these other heart-related types of things. I had a family history of everyone in my family had died of heart disease by the time they were younger than I. So I know a lot about this, but nitric oxide is the great modulator. It's the great buffer. It's the answer to helping you be at optimum levels, even if you don't, you know, do your aerobics, eat all vegan food out of your garden, that you know that the soil is good. If you don't do all those other things, or if you do as much as you can, you're going to have a healthier, happier life if you have safe nitric oxide and absorbable vitamin D3.
Yeah, that's again, I can attest to that. I mean, I know that's true because I've now experienced it, right? So I've got the research side and the intelligence side, the intellectual side of this, but then I've also got the personal experience now that's gone along with that. Another thing that he goes over in the book is, and I'm not going to go to that now, but he talks about how all metabolic diseases require nitric oxide, right? To regulate them or to get rid of them, or a lot of times the metabolic diseases enter and increase because there's a lack of nitric oxide.
Do you want to know why? Because nitric oxide is the body's greatest anti-inflammatory. It fights inflammation.
Yeah, and I've seen, he says that. In fact, if you run a search on inflammation with nitric oxide, it's all over this book.
Off the charts.
In fact, I did that.
And Greg, think about it. Think about it. This is where, you know, again, I'm not a cardiologist. Actually, a cardiologist, a cardiovascular surgeon, they're a plumber. They're a high-paid, quality plumber. They don't fix the artery. They just patch over the problem. They put in a graft, they put in a stent, whatever, to try to alleviate the emergency. But they're not going down 4 levels of gravel and getting rid of all the asphalt and rebuilding the whole road. They're just putting a patch over the pothole. So one of the challenges that we have in metabolic issues and inflammatory issues is getting to the source, the systemic cause of the disease. That's why these studies are getting such resonance among some of the smartest nutritional, alternative medicine, even traditional medical people. But you know what, the traditional, you show a cardiologist my research, And you know what their comment is?
Hmm.
Instead of wow, it's, are you trying to put me out of business? That's what they say. I've heard that dozens of times. No, we're not trying to put them out of business, because there's enough people, like you said, that are at their last ditch. I mean, when you're 90% occluded, you may not have time to take 4 servings of Cardio Miracle, for 6 months to help alleviate that problem. You need to get something, you need to solve it now. If you dropped a clot and have a stroke, you need to do something now. If you have clogged carotid arteries, you have to probably put in a stent or go in and do the horrific thing of scraping. They actually scrape the endothelial lining out.
Yeah, they did that on
and
my
the
dad.
endothelial lining is the thing that keeps you healthy. So it's a very it's sort of like amputating a leg, that you can't do anything better than that. So you just amputate the leg and hope for the best, that you stop the infection or the sepsis or whatever from spreading into the rest of or trying to keep it from your organs. And that's one of the cool things about nitric oxide. And I was going to talk about the fact that we have hundreds of thousands of miles of microcapillaries. And when you come to the chronic diseases and inflammation, that's why we have macular degeneration. That's why we have periodontal disease. That's why we have osteoporosis. That's why we have, problems with our neuropathy. That's why we have organ failure. It's these microcapillaries that get inflamed, and then they get occluded or blocked or clogged, so they can't get the blood to the end of the row or to the cell. They can't get the nutrition you're taking in to the end of the row. They can't get the amyloid plaques that are built up in your brain, and your blood flow's shutting down. So all of a sudden you start losing your memory, and you start, you're on your ways to Alzheimer's, dementia, which heaven forbid. So it's those microcapillaries trying to help relieve that inflammation that causes things, that becomes the issue that they're talking about. And uric acid is highly, it's like its name, acid. It's inflammatory.
It's very inflammatory. And it's people don't realize that it's not just about gout. It is a problem for your blood flow. It is a problem when that acid is running through your bloodstream. It is causing havoc in your blood vessels. To the
endothelial lining. It's that endothelial lining. See, the endothelium is a 1-cell thick lining that protects your organs and protects your cells from what is in your blood. And that lining, when it becomes inflamed, torn, compromised, then you no longer have that protection, which leads to the chronic illness getting worse.
Yeah. I want to close on this here. This is something that I have felt taking the Cardio Miracle, and sometimes maybe you've got actual data on this, but this is what Dr. Plummeter says on this. He says, you recall from the previous chapter, he says that nitric oxide is essential to vascular health. It's also key to the health of the brain, where it's directly involved in the transmission of messages and memory formation. Mm-hmm. As I'll explain in detail, he says in the next chapter, because insulin requires nitric oxide to stimulate glucose uptake in the body and brain, fructose-induced hyperuricemia has both direct and indirect roles in metabolic syndrome. In other words, if you've got problems with nitric oxide, you're going to have problems with metabolic disorder, with metabolic syndrome. And what I've noticed with the product, and this is actually written up in a research paper that I read from the National Institute of Health at ih.gov on nitric oxide, but it does improve brain health. And that I think that's something that people actually feel. They may not be able to have a marker on it that they can test.
You feel more clarity.
You feel more clarity, and you feel honestly more energy out of it. I don't know if there's any data that you guys have got on that yet, but the nitric. I think I know that a lot of people after taking the product, they have that sense of they feel better, and there's a better brain health.
Well, and not that I'm giving medical advice, but when you have a huge number of the population taking drugs that are reducing cholesterol is like the oil in your car. If you don't have enough oil in your car, the engine is going to have metal against metal, and it's going to wear out. It's going to break. So we have a society and a system that is advising people to lower their cholesterol, when what they should be doing, advising them to raise their nitric oxide so that their artery, their endothelial lining is smooth like Teflon instead of sticky and irritated like Velcro. So if you have a smooth arterial wall with adequate nitric oxide, the blood flows, the regulation of nitric oxide will give the cell what it needs for nutrition purposes. Well, what's the most complex place? The second most microcapillaries in your body next to your colon is in the brain. So you've got the brain that's made up of fat or cholesterol, liquid, and microcapillaries, and a bunch of nerve endings and other things. So obviously, if you're going to have less inflammation in the brain, if you're going to have better nutrition delivered to the cells of the brain, and you're not starving it from the cholesterol that it desperately needs to function properly, that's why a lot of people have found that the brain fog occurs when they're taking the medication that's supposed to keep the arteries from clogging. Well, what keeps the arteries from clogging is cholesterol's not the enemy. And again, people, you do the research. Cholesterol's not the enemy. The enemy is inflammation and sticky arteries. That's the enemy. So if you can eliminate, if you can have cholesterol way above what the experts say, and if there's no place to stick, it won't stick. So if you have a clean, healthy endothelial lining with adequate systemic nitric oxide being released 24/7, it's like flowing, it's like water flowing through a smooth spigot as opposed to one that's corroded and clogged. So it's just common sense. But we have been told since 1968 from a congressional hearing. Now, if you think that I'm not a huge supporter of certain part of the medical community, I'm less a supporter of Congress making medical decisions. They're the ones who made the decision that cholesterol was enemy number one to heart disease in America. How well has that worked for them since 1968? When did we find out that maybe taking the margarines and the low-fat foods and everything else that actually had more sugar in it, no fat, and now what do all the healthiest people say? Eat the butter, eat the keto diet, eat the whipping cream, have butter and what you do, eat avocados 3 times a day. I mean, the healthy fats. There's a difference between healthy fats and bad fats. There's a difference between healthy sugars and unhealthy sugars. From having a diabetic background that you look at the you look at the glycemic index as where you're looking for answers. You're not, people say to me, how can Cardio Miracle help diabetics when you have stevia and erythritol and organic fruits and vegetables? I said, because they're low glycemic and they're natural sugars that are able to be done. I mean, we have 30 calories in a serving of Cardio Miracle. It's unbelievable. And we're now seeing people losing 10 pounds a month doing intermittent fasting. And our scientists have told us that it actually helps the intermittent fasting to take Cardio Miracle during the fast. In fact, Dr. Christiane Northrup, arguably one of the great experts on nitric oxide and women's health in the world, written books on it, wrote about it for 20 years. She said to me the other night on a webinar we did together, she said, John, my skin looks better. I went on a 5-day fast, and the only thing I did was I ate a couple of nuts every day, and I took Cardio Miracle, and I lost 7 pounds. My skin felt better. I wasn't hungry. And every time I felt a little bit of hunger, I took another Cardio Miracle. She took 4 to 5 a day, and she said, this was the most amazing detoxing fast I've ever done in my entire life. And she's a 70-plus year medical doctor who said, this product is over the top. and that she thinks that everyone should do Cardio Miracle fast. So if you want to see something exciting and interesting, do a 24 or 48 hour fast, do nothing but Cardio Miracle. Look at your urine when you happen to go to the restroom or the bathroom, and you will see bubbles, which are fat bubbles that come from the urine. It's crazy. I mean, it's amazing. But you'll also feel really, really good. I'm basically kind of doing that now. And I mean, I'm losing, I'm dropping inches. I have lots of problems. I like food and I travel a lot. I entertain a lot, and I have a hard time in a nice restaurant, from restaurant bread or sharing a dessert or whatever. But I'm telling you, it's only been the last month or so. We've learned that this autophagy thing, this cell burning the cells and the fat is miraculous. And the intermittent fasting, I mean, we probably are going to be leading the way into the new year about being the best diet plan ever known to man, that at the same time is healthy, instead of people doing a diet plan and saying, oh, I know it's not healthy for me, but I got to lose the weight. Well, you can do that on Cardio Miracle and get the double benefit.
Okay. John, really appreciate your time with this and talking over these things. I like doing this because, number one, you're a sponsor of the program and you help our program keep going forward. Number two, the product is great. And I mean that very sincerely. And number three, we're spreading out into going into other health issues. And this is a good part of that. So thank you for your time. Thank you for the product. And we're going to do this again soon.
Have them go to the website, know that we have 100% money back guarantee. And I would say this in all sincerity, if you have a serious financial hardship, an accident, by the way, Greg, you wouldn't probably know this, but we reached out to all of our customers in Florida and we sent them single serve packages of Cardio Miracle for those to deal with the extra stress and challenges that they were dealing with. We're all about our customers and all about helping humanity. So like I say, if somebody has a serious financial hardship, if they would either mention it in the comments or go to support@cardiomiracle.com, that's one of the ways we give back. And we've had amazing, miraculous experiences in having lives being dramatically improved. So we're happy to do that. But at the same time, we're thrilled to be a part of Cwic and all the good things you're doing. And so we hope the customers will continue to have a great experience. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that. And for those of you that are interested in the product, you can click on the link in the description box or go to the website, cwicmedia.com, CWICmedia.com, and watch my video on there. And that'll give you a link to the product as well. John, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. Great to be with you.